Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our ICANN78 recap webinar today. We are really excited to have you here. Before we start, there are just a few housekeeping notes that we'd like to cover. This webinar is for informational purposes only. If you'd like to further discuss any of the information mentioned here today, please reach out to your domain portfolio advisor to begin those conversations. Also, this webinar will be recorded. You'll receive a copy via email later this week, and you'll also find it on our website, markmonitor.com. If you're experiencing any audio issues, please take a look at the troubleshooting document that was linked to in the chat on the GoToWebinar control panel widget that you have. And now, will we be answering questions? Time allowing, yes, we will. We have a ton of great information for you today. So we are going to try and leave some time at the end. And if you do have any questions, please leave them in the questions area that you see in the GoToWebinar widget as well. So now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and meet your presenters today. This webinar is hosted by Markmonitor's Global Industry Relations team. They are a brilliant bunch, heavily invested in both the domain industry and our client success. So leading the team, you see here we have Prudence Malinki. She's head of Global Industry Relations, and she's been with Markmonitor for 9 years. Shane Layman and Heidi Zhang are both managers of the Global Industry Relations team and have both been with the larger Markmonitor organization for 6 years. Niemi, our Manager of Strategic Initiatives, has been with us for 19 years. So you are all in great hands. And with that, please take it away, team.
Thanks, Natalie. Let's kick off with the agenda for everybody in attendance. We're going to start with the ICANN78 meeting at a glance. We will then move to the Day 0 and NIS2 update. From there, we go to the IDN PDP update, the ccNSO WSIS plus 20 and policy development updates. We'll have a DNS abuse amendments update, a Web3 update. We'll list off some of the GAC Communique, the SSAT update around RDRS, the registration data policies IRT, the subsequent procedures, the new GTLD timeline, the transfer PDP update, bulk transfers, and the CEO search update.
Hi everybody, my name is Prudence, as Natalie so kindly introduced us. What an amazing introduction, by the way. It's absolutely fantastic. So welcome to the ICANN78 ICANN recap webinar. So before we dive in, I just want to take the time to remind everyone as to why we attend ICANN meetings. Essentially, we do the work so you don't have to, but in short, there's a lot of work that goes into an ICANN. We will spend our time as a team advocating on your behalf, you being our clients, and making sure that any policy that's being enacted is with you at the heart of it and is in your best interests. We also make sure that we are in the PDP groups, and we'll talk a bit more about that later, but we also use the ICANN meetings to develop relationships all through the industry, at both registry level, registrar levels, vendors, and clients. So ultimately, there's always an ask, because it's me, and that's how I operate. What I really want from you is to have you join us. Look at these shiny faces, look how happy they are, and look how passionate we are talking, and we'll be talking about all things policy. We want you all individually to be as passionate and as involved as we are, not because we're being lazy and we don't want to do all the work. We do, we really do, but ultimately we want to make sure that you have your place at the table and that your voice is heard. And sometimes the best way is to get stuck in, dip your toe in that pool and participate. So we're going to be making sure that we can help you do that if you want to. I mean, I'm not saying you have to, I'd like you to, but you know, you do have a choice. Anyway, let's go to the next slide and let's have a chat about all things ICANN. Next slide, please. Okay, so the ICANN78 meeting, and boy, what a meeting it was. It was the 25th anniversary of ICANN. And to be honest, this meeting in and of itself was such a celebration. Held in the stunning city of Hamburg in Germany. Everyone was eating orphan schnitzel, and it was a really great get together. we had literally nearly 2,500 participants in total, with almost 2,000 participants in person. Now remember, we are in a post-COVID landscape where this time maybe a year ago, we weren't even sure we could fist bump. We are now talking to people and there was hugs aplenty. And also as well, this ICANN Hamburg, it wasn't just the celebration of ICANN being around for a quarter of a century. It was also a really good opportunity to see the European flavour of things, with DE Nick doing a fantastic job. Hey guys, also the ECHO team doing amazing work as well. And it was a really good opportunity for ICANN to show their European flex. We had so much interactions from the European registries who were out in full force. So we saw a lot from the likes of DE Nick, obviously, AFNIC were there, DK were there, or Octum DK were there, and a lot of the other SE as well, also there. So there was a lot of European flavours and a lot of European engagement and participation. And also this meeting was a really interesting one because it was the return of, and everyone gets very excited about this, constituency day. So every single constituency group had an entire day to sit down, bond, get to know each other, and kind of talk about all things their group. So I was sat with the RRSG and we had an entire day to talk about all things RRSG related. And also this meeting saw the launch of the highly anticipated Registrar program. That's right, Registrar even, which is the really great mentor system where mentees and mentors can kind of get together and learn from each other and get used to the ICANN mechanisms and get more connected and in the bed of ICANN. And obviously I'm going to be such a fan because I might be a member of the registrar program, and yeah, I might be a mentor. So I say hi to Adiola. Hi. Hopefully she's listening. If not, then that's kind of awkward. But yes, I mean, the ICANN meeting in Hamburg really was absolutely phenomenal. And as you can see from the slide, we had lots and lots of really great high interest sessions that were going on, and we'll talk a lot about some of this content in our slides to come. Another thing, just to remind everyone, is about the format of ICANN meetings as a whole. So let's take a holistic look. So ICANN meetings run 3 times a year. We have 3 different types of meeting. So the first meeting that we actually tend to have is the community forum, which is usually held either between February or March. Again, it's around 6 days, and it's the opportunity for the community to come together and do cross-community communication and integration and interaction. And then we move on to the policy forum, which is a shorter meeting of 4 days or so, and it's usually around June, and it's really heavily focused on all things to do with policy. And then we move on to the AGM meeting, which is where all of the good stuff happens. So the AGM is action-packed. We have lots of board action and lots of board meetings as well. And as well as there's developments with regards to moving on and adding new people to various groups. And then you also have your additional meetings as well that happen, such as the public forum and the overarching board meeting as well. And it was such a fantastic affair this time round. And as I've mentioned, there was a completely different atmosphere with this meeting. It was really a celebration, and a lot of registries came together. And for me personally, this meeting was a very important meeting for me because it was the first time that my entire team could come together. And you, if you were at Hamburg, you would have seen the team running around in their Markmonitor kicks and doing a fantastic job. So it's such an honour and a privilege to not only have them with me at Hamburg, but to have them join me on this webinar, because again, this is unprecedented, where the entire team are all taking a stab at this. So with that in mind, I do have to apologise in advance. If you can't tell already, ICANN78 was action-packed. We have an incredibly tight agenda and a lot to get through, and I have the task of trying to keep to talking to less than 2 minutes per slide, which is impossible because everyone who knows me knows I talk too much. So I'm sorry in advance. I'm probably going to run over, which means that you may need to hold your questions until a later date if I keep talking too much, which is pretty much likely. So without any further ado, let's move on to the next slide. So as I've mentioned, ICANN has the community meeting, which is 6 days. However, before the event started, Echo, our friends at Echo, hi Thomas, hi Niles, they had a phenomenal day 0 event where they were talking about all things NIS2. And there's a reason why NIS2 is an incredibly important piece of legislation. And I'll touch on this consistently throughout the session of today, where we talk about the impacts of European legislation and how we operate and do things with regards to TLDs. Now, I wanted to try and get through this webinar without saying the dreaded words GDPR, but it has to be said. So as a result of GDPR, we've had so many far-reaching things with regards to what we can do and can't do with registrant data. And we'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later on. Now, with regards to NIS2, which is another European directive, this again has the potential to have really far-reaching impacts as to how we validate registrant data and how we conduct registrant validation for domain registrations across Europe. So because there's so much potential impact, which could ultimately make the registration experience quite difficult with regards to European ccTLDs, we are all working together passionately to ensure that there's harmonization across the field. But to talk to you a little bit more about why it's so important. With regards to the legislation itself, there's a specific article called Article 28. Now, what this does is it creates an obligation for registrars and registries to collect and maintain accurate and complete domain registration data. Now, the way that this has been interpreted means that there's going to be certain levels of validations that are being done at registry level with regards to domain registrations. And you can see from the slide the types of registrant data that will need to be checked and need to be validated. So there's a genuine risk of fragmentation with regards to, one set of registration processes for France and a completely different set of registration processes for Germany or Denmark. So all of the teams are working very hard to try and collaborate and try and make things standardized as much as possible. And also us as Markmonitor, as a registrar, we're engaging in various different policy development groups across Europe, such as IE in Ireland and Denmark as well, in order to make sure that those policies are being implemented in the best way possible with regards to our clients and with regards to our business model. Because, and one of the other complexities of this too, is that there are so many different kinds of registrar models and so many different kinds to validate registrant data. There's a lot of scope for this to become very difficult to implement. So the NIS2 session that was held at day 0 by the fantastic team at Echo was really, really, really well attended. And also as well, members of the EC were present. So it was a really engaging discussion where they're able to talk about the legislation and where we are with things, but then also kind of provide a little bit of an update as to where we need to go. Now, with regards to next steps, there will be more to come. As you can see from the slides, the deadline for transposition is next year. So we'll be seeing some real changes with regards to how we validate certain things and how we register domain names in Europe. And what we're trying to do is to ensure that NIS2 doesn't become the next GDPR and have huge, far-reaching ramifications that make things a little bit more complicated in the future. And so I have to give a quick shout out to all of the various members of Centre for their groups and their work with regards to NIS2, and for them to be encouraging and fostering that collaboration that we really need to make sure that NIS2 doesn't have a negative impact. And also as well, thanks again to all of the team at Echo for organising such a fantastic event. Okay, next slide.
All right, well, that's a great start, and I don't think there's any way I can possibly follow Prudence's excitement and passion, but I'll do my best. So here we are to talk about the Internationalized Domain Names Expedited Policy Development Process, or EPDP. So this is an important part of the next round. This is one of the main external dependencies that will affect the next round implementation program. So this EPDP has been going since I believe 2019, well, I believe the EPDB started in 2021. Some of the work started in 2019 around this. You know, as one can imagine, it's quite a complex undertaking to do policy work around different languages. You know, internationalized domains have to do with non-ASCII languages that are in other foreign scripts, like for instance, like the Cyrillic script for Russia, the Russian language, pardon me. So there's a lot of work that's going on around this. There was 3 working sessions that occurred in Hamburg. A lot of discussion around things like having a particular source domain that would be, you know, identified at the TLD level, and then various variants would be defined based on the source domain and associated with it. And then there's some work to be done on, you know, to figure out the behaviors of how those work. If you transfer them, do they, you know, to the variants move with the transfer? If you delete them, do they get deleted at the same time? You know, are they actually reserved? Are they registered, or are they reserved? Issues along those lines. So the group did have some success. It did forward its consensus recommendations to the GNSO Council. So that was, you know, great work done by them. And they're going to continue to work through some of this process. There's going to be a face-to-face meeting in Kuala Lumpur sometime either in later November or early December as they continue to do that. One side issue that came up during the working sessions that sort of became known as the Quebec issue, or Quebec for you English speakers. You know, Quebec being the province in Canada that's French speaking. Apparently the .Quebec string was applied for in the 2012 round without any sort of IDNs or diacritics, when the registry likely would have wanted to get one. So the registry has come up with the idea that they may apply in the next round using diacritics. So like tildes and things like that. That may have some unintended consequences, doing with string similarity and some other issues. So the PDP didn't found it to be out of the scope of what they were working on, but it's something that ICANN is going to try to address and deal with some policy issues around that. So stay tuned for more on that. Next slide. Shane, over to
Awesome.
you.
Thanks, Chris. Great update there. So I'll be covering the ccNSO highlights and some of the updates. So let's start off with, you know, what is, or who are the ccNSO? The ccNSO stands for Country Code Name Supporting Organization. This is a policy development group responsible for a range of global issues regarding country code top-level domains within the ICANN structure. There's 175 active members from ccTLDs across the globe, and at each ICANN session, there's usually a pretty good turnout. So one of the major talking points and topics for ccNSO sessions was the WSIS plus 20 review, or the World Summit on the Information Society 20 years later review of standards and practices for internet governance, excuse me. Some of these bigger words start getting jumbled together. The ccNSO wants to ensure that the multi-stakeholder model continues. However, it is noted that in 2025, after the 20-year review, there's potential changes to the government support for multi-stakeholder internet governance that could occur. And on the topic of internet governance, we had members from North America, Latin America, Africa, and the APAC region, the Asia Pacific region, which spoke about their internet governance priorities for their respective regions. From North America, there's a big importance of representation for the multi-stakeholder model in the WSIS plus 20 review. Also, something that I hadn't thought of yet was the emerging AI issues and how specifically AI relates to cybersecurity. So there should be some interesting content coming about AI and cybersecurity soon. From the Latin American region, again, an emphasis on protecting the multi-stakeholder model and internet governance as it is. The old American saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then also an expansion of multi-stakeholderism, which will remove barriers of entry to individuals and corporations so that they can be more involved in the ICANN sector. From the Africa region, it was apparent that access to meaningful and reliable internet connectivity in the region is the utmost priority, of utmost importance and priority. And then in APAC, there was a call for central agencies to deal with DNS abuse, or sorry, a central agency, not agencies. What they're finding is that there's too many DNS security agencies trying to mitigate DNS abuse in ccTLDs. And like their colleagues in Africa, meaningful and reliable internet is a priority. This moves us on to the next round implications from the ccTLD community. And something I found really interesting was there's a portion of the ccTLD community that view new GTLDs as competition to ccTLDs. A statistic about Germany that was very apparent at Hamburg was that Germany is the third biggest market for GTLDs. Hamburg, for example, is a regionally focused geographic TLD. It draws more attention, which leads some to believe that there could be potential for more geographic focused GTLD applications in the next round. Using the Hamburg success as an example of how geographic GTLDs can be beneficial. And then moving on, ccNSO policy development and IDN strings is also a major talking point for the last few ICANN sessions as it pertains to the next round of new GTLDs. The ccNSO is vying for more scripts than just the Latin-based scripts that that exist now for the next round of new GTLDs. And the last topic on this slide is around ccTLD DNS abuse. For the past few ICANNs, the DNS abuse subcommittee, or the DASC, has been leading sessions regarding DNS abuse and mitigating DNS abuse in ccTLDs. Their two main initiatives are creating a repository of useful information for ccTLD managers and a dedicated email list for ccTLD managers so that they are aware of the tools available to mitigate DNS abuse in their ccTLD. At ICANN78, the DASC, or that DNS abuse subcommittee, released the initial repository documents and access for ccTLD managers. And there's also a movement to use AI to help detect DNS abuse in ccTLDs. DNS Belgium and SIDN Labs.nl are cooperating on a machine learning approach to mitigating DNS abuse, mitigating abusive and malicious domains, for some ccTLDs that are maybe on a smaller scale. They don't necessarily have the resources available to monitor all of the abuse that happens in their ccTLD. So implementing machine learning or an AI approach can really help benefit their ccTLD. Next slide, please. And now let's look at what's next for the ccNSO. So at ICANN78, there was a lot of strategy and planning sessions for the next few years of the ccNSO. The three major initiatives that the ccNSO Strategic and Operational Planning Committee is focusing on is, one, evolving and strengthening the multi-stakeholder model to facilitate diverse participation in policy development. I know that sounds like I'm just reading something, but I am, because it was very clearly spelled out in the sessions what they're focusing on. Facilitating the DNS ecosystem improvements within various ccTLDs, ensuring that root servers still function the way that they're supposed to, and then supporting the evolution and strengthening of the root server system and root zone management. From there, the ccNSO is also looking to collaborate closer with GAC members from their region directly, shifting from working through intermediary groups such as the public safety group. And this leads into the continued self-regulation of ccTLDs. The ccTLD community enjoys their self-regulation. They don't believe they need a higher level of regulation. However, it is noted to maintain self-regulation, mitigation of DNS abuse in ccTLDs is a vital part, which is why the DASC has been created to help kind of mitigate as much of the DNS abuse that exists as possible. And finally, to finish up, the ccNSO Council and the ICANN Board held a meeting where the ccNSO expressed their willingness to allow ICANN to use them as an experimental group to try new approaches to improvements of various programs, working groups, and policies. And then also on the topic of the next round, there is a major question that the ccNSO Council asked of the ICANN Board, which was, Are ccTLDs likely to have the same impact as they did in the last round of new GTLDs, where the ICANN board is going back and going to have a response for them, hopefully by San Juan. And that is it for ccNSO. If you want to go to the next slide, please.
All right. Well, as Shane noted, DNS abuse is mainly the word of the day in the last few ICANN meetings. As you can see, the contracted party house negotiation team made of the registrar stakeholders group and the registry stakeholders group began some negotiations earlier this year to add an actual definition of DNS abuse to both the registrar accreditation agreement and as well as the registry agreement, so that both parties, the registry operators and registrars, and I think I got those out of order, but got both of their agreements to be altered to include DNS abuse, description, definitions, and activities that need to happen around it, which will protect end users in the community, as a whole, on the internet users. So currently, as shown here, this adds a definition to both agreements. Brings out things like where abuse contacts are, adds processes that need to be included in responding to requests, things like that. So, we view this as a very important, step for the industry to have this be defined formally and to be added to it to show that all the parties in the ICANN ecosystem are working together with the benefit of end users. So just now, the voting is still open until December 8th. However, we just got information from, I believe, in November 7th that said, based on some of the requirements of the voting process, a certain number of, either registries or registrars that had to vote, as well as they had to represent a certain number of fees that are covered in the annual ICANN fees, and I believe both thresholds were met on both sides. So, yay for the community, yay for internet users, and this is now the first step, and we'll probably have some more additional policy work on this, but I think this is a great sign. As Prudence showed, we should all give everybody a round of applause. That said, while you're, clapping away, we did want to have this be an interactive session, and we're about to discuss something that I'm going to hand off to Shane, where he's going to bring out a poll question to get your thoughts on Web3. But before I do that, if you look in the control panel in the GoToWebinar site, you can see that there's actually two handouts that you can pull down if you'd like. One is a recent new GTLD quarterly report for the Q3 of this year. And the other is, I believe, a security document around our new Web3 solutions product. So feel free to go get those, and then I'm going to hand it off to Shane. He'll go through the first poll question. Next slide, or next poll, whatever the right term is.
Next something. Okay, we will have a poll for you right now. Hopefully this is able to be seen by everyone. Please just let us know, your thoughts on Web3 based on the prompts below. Feel free to ask questions as well, if you will, or if you have any. And then we'll move on once we kind of have an understanding of what's interesting or challenging about Web3 to you. Just a reminder that if you could please just take a second to select all that apply with regards to this prompt. This is really helpful for us, especially as we discuss this new and emerging landscape of Web3. We will move on to the next slide here in a few and kind of discuss more about Web3 at ICANN. Awesome, look at the results. Just as I suspected, lack of rights protection mechanisms for Web3 domains is the outright winner, winner being relative, but for what's challenging or interesting about Web3, really good response rate here. Thank you for all that was able to participate. Again, like I said, this is super helpful for us as we go forward in this new space. All right. Thank you, Natalie, for the next slide. Web3, I know it can be confusing for everybody. And if you would like to learn more about Web3 outside of what we'll go over today, please reach out to Markmonitor. We have a lot of resources, me being one of them, who can help walk you through kind of what's Web3, what to be aware of. Also, we will have a podcast coming out soon discussing Web3 as well as other topics. And various webinars in the future as well. So let me dive into this slide because I feel like I'm taking up too much time. Web3's been a part of my life for about 2 years now, so it's kind of a focus point for me. But so as always, Web3 and the emergence of blockchain naming spaces is a major talking point at ICANN, whether it's side conversations or direct conversations. Fortunately enough for ICANN78, the GAC held a session specifically about kind of an education piece for Web3 and kind of developments that have happened and whatnot. So I'll go over a few of the developments and some of the information here. And then, as I stated before, if you want to learn more about Web3, please just reach out to us. So WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, is looking to implement a form of UDRP or URS, these rights protection mechanisms, these practices in the Web3 space, and they're using Namebase, a retail registrar, to do some of these tests. It is noted that the technical side of this isn't quite resolved yet. However, from a application standpoint, it's potential to work. It's not going to be the traditional UDRP or URS that we've all known for years. It's going to be a form of one or both. So stay tuned on that as it develops. We'll keep everybody in the know. Some interesting statistics from the DNS Research Federation came out at this GAC session. This research project was a 1.5 year project researching blockchain domains to gain a scope of the Web3 space, really like where it is right now. Total amount of domains is at 6.4 million. This is through Unstoppable Domains, the Ethereum name service, and Zalika. I believe I pronounced that right. Another interesting piece from this is that most Web3 names are purely used as wallet address shorteners for ETH or Matic, which is the Ethereum and Polygon respectively native coins. So basically just changing that long cryptographic hash that you have for your wallet address, changing it to domain chain.crypto, for example. The third most usage that's seen from NFT domains and blockchain names right now is the reselling of the ERC20 tokens. These are basically just trading NFTs in the traditional sense. From that survey that the DNS Research Federation sent out, it asked surveyors in the ICANN community what their priority list should be. And I thought this was very interesting. The first point, and the one that had the most votes, was policy making, some sort of policy development that is created that people can get behind, as well as an increased alliance between different blockchain domain providers. It seems that everyone's operating in silos. We are seeing some collaboration between different naming organizations, but for the broader scope, I guess, if you will, of this survey, the surveyors were looking for, or the answerers were looking for, a more holistic view, a combined front, if you will. The next one is ICANN engagement, which we did see Unstoppable Domains held a session, another kind of knowledge-based session with various members of the community. Capacity building and upscaling, kind of just understanding where blockchain names are, what their application would be. And then finally, the further research into blockchain domains. I think it's still kind of one of those areas where not a lot is known about what could be And so it's all speculation at this point. And to finish up Web3, if I haven't bored you at this point, it's kind of a look into the future. So the look into the future, and this is something that was pretty much a consensus between everyone at ICANN, I should say, is that if major browsers start adopting blockchain domains, it will change the whole dynamic of the internet community that we know. That being said, there aren't any plans for major browsers to start adopting blockchain names resolving natively. But if one does, it could change, it will change the way that the internet functions. And that's it for Web3. Next slide, please.
Okay, that's GAC. Hi everyone, this is Heidi Zhang from JRR team. I'm very happy to be able to attend ICANN78 in Hamburg last month. I spent up most of my time at GAC sessions, so I'm going to share with you about all the highlights and updates from GAC. So GAC is the short term for the Governmental Advisory Committee, and I believe you're all very familiar with that. So in this ICANN, 93 GAC members and 8 observers attended, and the GAC held meetings with ICANN Board, at-large advisory committee, and ccNSO, and took part in cross-community discussions. So the first 2 days, there were 10 capacity development workshops split into Foundation Policy Day and a Technical Day. The Foundation Policy Day covered an overview of GAC and ICANN.org, discussions on DNS abuse, the next round of new GTLDs, and the applicant support program. And also, there was an introduction to the high-level governmental meeting that will be held in Rwanda during ICANN 80. On the first day, we ended with a breakout session to share and discuss regional priorities. The second day, the Technology Day, covered in detail an introduction to the domain name system, alternative namespaces, blockchains, and naming system. Also covered an overview of the stability and security of the domain name system and trademark issues. And again, the second day also ended with a breakout session to discuss alternative namespaces and emerging technology that impacts the domain name system. So as mentioned, ICANN 80 Policy Forum will be in June 2024 in Kigali in Rwanda. There were a lot of discussions going on of which 4 topics should be covered during that meeting. And the next one is about Public Safety Working Group, PSWG. PSWG has been continuing the teamwork on trying to advocate for policies that keep the public safe. They focus on mitigating DNS abuse and also discussing ways for effective access to domain name registration data in a way that balances the interests between law enforcement, cybersecurity researchers, and also privacy interests of the registrants. Some of the work has been in the implementation review team for phase 1. PSWG has also been participating in the registration data request service, that's RDRS. And for the emerging technologies, ICANN members are also learning. There are topics related such as global DNS, alternative name system, blockchains. There were themed speeches about the new technologies and panel discussions divided by different languages. And for the RDRS, as we said, that's the registration data request service. The GAC welcomes the launch of the voluntary registration data request service this November. GAC encouraged all relevant parties, including registrars and any requesters, to use it to meet its intended purpose of gathering sufficient data to inform the ICANN Board's consideration of the policy recommendation related to a future system of standardized access and disclosure. However, for registrars that provide privacy or proxy services, registrars have the discretion on how to respond to the requests. That's good news for us. So the next slide, please. And for the GAC and ccNSO and at-large meetings, applicant support team has accomplished a great deal of work. Of the 38 pending recommendations that the board sent back, the majority of them are no longer pending. A number of them were adopted in September. They are now focusing on the recommendations that remain rejected. Other interesting topics are closed generics, contention resolution, and other issues. There were a lot of discussions about the auction. Board is engaging an expert to analyze the issue. In general, people hope that in order to eliminate the gaming of the auction and participant winning money is to have all the proceeds go to ICANN initiatives. Only participants that are truly interested in running the string will be participating in this process, not people trying to game the system or win money from losing. The whole intent is to have legitimate winning bidders and winning applicants run the strings successfully and provide a better service and item to the community. There was one advice to the board that in the next round of new GTLD application, try to avoid the use of auctions in contention sets between commercial and non-commercial applications. And there was another call, community priority evaluation, which means if it's a community application, they already get priority in contention. That's likely to favor the less wealthy applicant. And for the next round of new GTLD, applicant support program is projected to open in Q4 of 2024 and will run all the way to Q1 of 2026. Registry service provider evaluation will be open for applicants in Q4 of 2024 and will run all the way to Q1 of 2026. The applicant guidebook is projected that the draft will be out on Q2 of 2025, and the approved version will be out by the end of Q4 of 2025. If you add those two plus 1 year to really operationalize within the org after the AGB is out, that takes the projection for opening of the next round to Q2 of 2026. After the implementation of the recommendations out of the sub-pro final report, board has approved all the 98 recommendations and leaving about 38 that was still pending, which the board and ccNSO council has been working to approve. So they had left 7 not adopted and 13 not still pending. So quite a bit of progress was made since last March until now in terms of approving pending recommendations. So there were about 7 topics broadly that GAC has identified of those 38 pending recommendations that considered very important to GAC. These topics were predictably PICs, RVCs, applicant supports, and auctions. One recommendation from the sub-pro final report was predictably framework as needed. To do that, there needs to be a standing committee, so-called SPIRT, S-P-I-R-T, the Standing Predictability Implementation Review Team. This body would be responsible for reviewing those potential issues, deciding what level of new policy or new guidelines for new different approaches to what needs to be done. GAC's advice was SPIRT needs to ensure that all ICANN communities have participation, the ability to participate on equal footing. ccNSO Council would ultimately be responsible for the oversight of SPIRT and reviewing the recommendations and leading this or have responsibility over it. But this SPIRT is still being in the process of being chartered by the ccNSO. And as for the DNS abuse has remained a strategic priority for ICANN. It's an ICANN strategic plan now and also for the next 5 years. DNS security threats and DNS abuse are something of shared responsibility and awareness, and it is not something that can only be solved within ICANN model. It is something that registries and registrars have a role to play, and even within the entire ICANN ecosystem. The three primary objectives of ICANN's DNS security threat mitigation program have been for ICANN to provide research and information to the community, to provide tools for combating DNS abuse and mitigating DNS abuse, as well as contractual enforcement with registries and registrars. During ICANN78, the GAC welcomed updates on advancements in DNS abuse measurement, examples of DNS abuse mitigation solutions, and an update from the ccNSO DNS Abuse Standing Committee. Two projects are working on right now. One is Compass, which is a robust, transparent, and academically rigorous product to measure DNS abuse. You can find the project by Googling DNS AI Compass. It is a free product and they produce monthly reports. The other project is NetBeacon. It is a still ongoing product and it is a free, standardized, centralized abuse reporting system that makes it easy for anyone to report abuse to an ICANN accredited registrar. To make the abuse report more time-saving and well-structured, NetBeacon is also integrating ccTLDs into the services such as UK, NZ, AU, and CH. And as for the closed generic GTLDs, the GAC offered the advice that prior to the next round of new GTLD, to ensure the forthcoming applicant guidebook clearly states that closed generic GTLDs applications will not be considered unless and until there is a community-developed consensus policy in place. So these are all from my GAC notes and sharing. If you have any questions, please just let us know. Okay, go to the next slide, please.
Right, so thank you so much, Heidi, for that fantastic review on literally everything to do with GAC, which is very exciting. We have literally just over 10 minutes to do a lot of content, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to have your questions today. However, I'm sure you noticed that we had the little surprise of the polling questions. This is supposed to be as interactive as possible. So just to give you a heads up, there's going to be 2 additional polling questions. And on top of that, to say thank you and also to give you some more information, we have 2 documents as Chris has highlighted. So if you click on the handout section of the webinar, you can see 2 potential additional documents that you can download and read at your leisure. Now, I know Heidi's mentioned a little bit about the RDRS, which is lovingly referred to as the red dress system or service. Now, essentially, this is going to be, and just to recap what it actually is and how it works and where we are with it, this is going to be the ticketing system, which is the standardized process to allow requests for registering data. Now, this is just to make the request. The system itself isn't going to give you the data. So this is something that really needs to be kind of clarified from the outset, what it can and can't do. But it's a one-stop shop, and it's one of these things where it will help make things centralized and help make it clear as to how you make your requests if you have requests. Now, that being said, as Heidi has alluded to, it isn't mandatory. So registrars have an opt-in system at the moment. And at this moment in time, all you registrars that may be or may not be listening to our podcasts, please do make sure that you sign up for the red dress system and the red dress service. And you can do that through your NSP portal or your enabling services portal through ICANN. In fact, the NSP portal is pretty much where all of the action is with regards to red dress. That's where you're going to be seeing where all of the things are taking place with regards to your submissions. Now, the registrar who you're making the request to will ultimately have the decision-making process as to whether that information gets shared with you or not. However, what Redress will do will hopefully simplify and streamline how you make those requests and how you access that data, or how at least you start the process in accessing that data. Because before, let's face it, it was a little bit of a minefield. And again, why are we in this position? European legislation, this consistent theme that happens where one thing takes place one way and there's a ripple effect that takes place in other places. So we need, as a result of, and again, I didn't want to say these 4 letters, but here I am saying it again, GDPR. As a result of GDPR, we're having to, even years later, create things such as a red dress, which I should have actually now, with the benefit of hindsight, maybe worn, because it would have been a little bit more, oh well, you know, hindsight's 2020. But yes, with regards to red dress, it's again to try and standardize things, because if you could imagine, before this existed, there was a myriad of different ways that you could make your request to obtain the data. Some had web forms, some had like emails, and again, there was a whole different ways, and some wouldn't respond at all. So with red dress, it's that first step in making it standardized. Now, unfortunately, as it is opt-in, not everyone is utilizing the red dress system at this moment in time. So again, a call out to all registrars, please do make sure you sign up to red dress, because again, it will help us aggregate the most valid and viable data moving forward. Now, that being said, I have another call out, because have you not noticed, my job is to make you do things. So my other call out is to ask you all to start using red dress. So this is more of my request to you, IP professionals, lawyers, and fellow smart people. Well, all people are smart, there's lots of different kinds of intelligence, but you know where I was going with this. So you can actually start utilizing the red dress system to actually make your requests for registrant data. So please start engaging with red dress and get familiar with red dress. And if you aren't familiar with red dress, ask about it. In fact, you can come to us and ask us about it. Or if you were in attendance at ICANN, there were many people walking around with an adorable badge that said, ask me about red dress. And so you can literally just physically ask them and get them to engage with you about this brand new shiny service to help you obtain that much needed registrant data. And here's the thing. Now we have this system in place, we really do need to use it. So even though I am being tongue-in-cheek with regards to my delivery, I am being sincere when I say we really do need to start utilizing that system. So please, guys, get engaged and get involved. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'm acutely aware we're so tight for time. So I'm going to keep this really short and really sweet. The registration data policy, IRT, essentially this has been a working group that's been together, the IRT team, since 2019, led by the absolutely lovely Dennis Chang of the ICANN org. Essentially, what this policy is regards to how we handle registration data moving forward in the new world since post, you guessed it, GDPR. So 2 really exciting and fun developments that have come as a result. So we now have very clear requirements relating to the organization field, but frankly, that's not what I want to talk to you about. What I want to talk to everyone on today's call about is about redaction. So what I want to do is show you now what currently registrant data will look like post IRT and moving on into the new world. We're currently waiting now for the policy to actually be public. And when it's publicized, there's going to be like an 18-month implementation period, which is already written on this slide. But I just feel like I need to let you know verbally as well, just in case. Not everyone likes to read. You know, that's why I'm talking. Anyway, so let's talk redaction. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what you're looking at here is what registrant data now looks like as a result of the IRT policy. And what we can see here is what columns or fields of data must be redacted and which ones may be redacted, and also which ones we may need consent, active consent from registrants in order to publish that data. Now, had we had time, I would love to have a deep dive about this with you and go into this and all of this good stuff and talk to you about how this works and the lay of the land. But unfortunately, we have 6 minutes. So what I will say is this. Shane alluded earlier that there's going to be some really interesting podcasts relating to content. Shane's going to be taking a Web3 stab and he's going to be kind of going into deep dives with regards to Web3 content. However, we're also going to have some bite-sized ICANN podcasts where we do deep dives on things that, frankly, we just don't have time to on a webinar, such as this. So we're going to imaginatively call our podcast ICANN Bites. And we're also just going to make sure that we kind of give you the information that you want to hear about the stuff that's going on and keep you up to date. So you can listen to us when you're, you know, walking the dog or cleaning or cooking dinner. I don't know. Things that people that have lives that don't revolve around work do. I don't know. Anyway, so let's move on to the next. Oh, actually, no. You know what I need to do? It's time for a poll, because you know that's the thing. I'm always going to ask you for stuff. So it's time to bring up the next poll. And this one's going to be all things next round. So let's lay up the questions. So guys, get your polling fingers ready. The question is, what is the main way the next round can affect you, right? So we've got a couple of options here for you. We can have, my company wants to apply for one or more brand TLDs because they're excited and engaged. Brand protection headaches, you know, there's more TLDs and you just don't know what to do. Like, how do I navigate the explosion that's gonna come? Also, there's allowing for more registration options and new use cases, because they're practically thinking about, wow, we can now register in lots of new and exciting ways. Or there's going to be absolutely no impact. You know, universal acceptance issues make usage difficult, you know, so it's not going to be an impact for you and your business or you and your brand. Or there's going to be .com and other existing TLDs make new rounds unnecessary. So, you know, you think there's enough. We don't need any more. We really don't need any more TLDs, and that's just how you feel about it. So get your answers in, get your responses in, and soon we'll have a look at those results and I'll let you know what we think. And I'm so sorry, we're so close to time. Wow, okay. Brand protection headaches. Ooh, that's a very pragmatic crowd here. So it looks like more people on today's webinar are concerned about having more TLDs to create and extend your brand protection policy in, which I guess I can relate to and understand. And then we've got equal second place with people who want to apply, and also people that are excited for the new registration options. And the thing that is quite heartwarming to me personally is that not one person today, not one person on our call has said that there's no impact, which is really good to hear, because it means that everyone is tuned in and knows what's going on. But there is like 11% that think that is unnecessary. And I relate to that too, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please.
All right.
So we have the IRT with Chris. Go for it.
Okay. All right. Well, due to time constraints, I'll speed round these really fast. So the subjects and procedures implementation review team is the parties who are assigned to come up with the final implementation of the policy recommendations, which will end up becoming the new applicant guidebook for the next round. At Hamburg, there were 3 different sessions that they had working time on, including discussion around application comments and how that would be reflected in ICANN systems, trying to nail down ICANN to get more criteria for when the next round can open so that we don't have any further delays, discussion around the registry system testing program, which will add some efficiencies as unlike in the 2012 round, people won't have to be like go through the technical testing for every possible application, and RSP will do it ahead of time, and then there'll be some other shortened time frames for testing. And then as Heidi referred to, applicant support, you know, that's a large issue that can affect, you know, underserved regions, underserved applicants across the world. So there's, you know, a lot of interest in that, and that's a big part of the ongoing policy work. Next slide. Okay, and this is the timeframes that were provided in, I believe, in ICANN77, and then discussed in the implementation plan that was released on July 31st. So again, you know, if the work continues at the pace that ICANN expects, it'll take around 2 years of policy development time, plus that 1 year of operationalization time to get it over the finish line, where we can then have that applicant window, which can open somewhere around April of 2026. Next slide. One other sort of related issue is the ccNSO sub-pro pending recommendation small team. They again are working on some of those issues that Heidi discussed around the pending outputs of the sub-pro PDP final report, the ones that are open. So they're going to actually have a call out soon for what they're calling the small team plus model, where they're going to have other folks kind of spread the wealth and do work on the individual pending issues that those particular parties are interested in. So they're going to reach out to the various groups like the GAC and other folks to get volunteers to continue that work. And then they have a work plan where if it's followed, they'll be able to work through this in a timely manner to keep up with the expected timetable. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Chris, for whizzing through all things sub-pro and next round. Look, guys, it goes without saying that we've tried to cover all of the really important salient topics from an action-packed ICANN, and as was kind of alluded to earlier, it's a lot to cover in an hour, and we're at the hour, but I'm going to keep talking, frankly, because I've got my time. And so, look, if you do have any questions about anything that's raised, or for example, if Chris was going really quickly and you have some additional questions, do feel free to reach out at any time. And I don't know if you can hear the sound of that train in the background, but there's a train in the background where I am. Anyway, so the transfer PDP update that's happened recently, we have been working on a transfer PDP for a considerable time now, and bulk transfers was the topic that we were covering during ICANN, and also we covered the TDRP as well. Now, because I know we're running over time, I'm not going to do the deep dive. However, one thing I can say is that the podcast series that I've mentioned before of ICANN Bites, imaginatively titled, will be covering the transfer PDP to kind of let you know and give a deep dive as to where we are now, and also where the future of transfers is going to be. Now, the reason why we have a specific section that's dedicated specifically to this PDP is because, as you know, what underpins a lot of what we do are the basics, such as registrations and transfers. And this PDP is essentially going to shape and hopefully streamline the transfer process, especially with regards to bulk migrations and bulk movements, which is one of the things that for us as Markmonitor is our bread and butter, and for you, our clients and loyal friends, it is important to you as well, whether you know it or not, because a lot of the work that we do for you revolves around transferring and moving domain names successfully on your behalf. So we'll always have a deep dive and cover with regards to this specific PDP. And in fact, this PDP I'm an active member of in order to make sure that we really do advocate on your behalf, and that whatever is implemented will be something that's in your best interests. And when we do our ICANN Bites podcast, we'll talk a little bit more about what the state of the transfer will look like now in the new world. And even the transfer process has been slightly impacted by GDPR. And all I seem to say is GDPR. NIS2 and GDPR, it's just all I say. It's just, but yes, anyway, as I've mentioned before, there will be a podcast and we will talk about that in more depth on that podcast. So let's move on to the next. Oh, actually, no, it's a poll. We have our final poll for the session. So I want to wrap up and bring you home and take you home with regards to just one more question, and it's to do with how you interact with ICANN. So don't be shy. One quick question. Can you say how you find ICANN and its policy processes? Do you find the ICANN policy process to be a great example of bottom-up stakeholder-driven model at work? Difficult to understand and navigate? A map and glossary, please. Maybe not with that tone, but that's just me. I get it animated. Something I'd like to learn more about and participate in. Now, I'm hoping secretly that's all going to be your answers, all of you. And then the last one is challenging to communicate about with internal stakeholders. Which, by the way, if this genuinely is your experience, come and talk to me. I'm really good at talking about policy all day long. Might even be my job. But yes, please vote now. Let us know what you're thinking. Let's gauge the room. Let's see what everyone's thinking at this moment in time.
Ooh.
I feel like maybe I might have guided the answer to this question, but thank you for giving me the exact answer that I wanted. Okay, this is wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. All right, so the overwhelming majority, which warms my soul and warms my spirit and frankly gives me life, is something I'd like to learn more about and participate in, because you know what this means? It means that I can take you with me and I can help you with that. So look, I'm the head of industry relations for all of Markmonitor. One of the things that we love to do, and we're going to even talk about on another slide, is how to get you to engage and how to bring you up to speed. We want to make sure that you can learn more and you can dip your toe in that water. We're very keen to make you do that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But before we wrap it home, I've got to talk to you about the CEO search, because this is the most close to popcorn moments I think there is in all of ICANN. So we are now, the CEO role is open. So if you are finally ready to make that plunge and you think you are up to the task, or if you know a guy who has a friend who does a thing, please feel free to apply for being CEO of ICANN. There's even a job spec and everything. You just send a CV, a covering letter, and just like put a few words as to why you should run and be CEO of all of ICANN. Now, the hopeful idea is that the CEO's location is going to be in LA, but obviously that could be subject to change. And look, let's face it, if you feel that you're up for a really big challenge, if multi-stakeholder models really warm your spirits, if you love engaging in various different groups, if you can speak multiple languages, and if you think, hey, I'm tired of my job, I can be big boss man, or I can, or big boss person, you should definitely see if you can throw your hat into the ring. There's a link with Parrot Leather, I think, for the actual position. It's all accessible on the ICANN site. And if you're ready for a change, if you're ready for the plunge, go for it. Go put your CV in the mix. I can't believe I'm actually suggesting that people do that, but I am. I'm doing it. I'm taking that stick. I'm just stirring that stick. But yes, I just wanted to close on that update because that is very exciting. And you've only got until November the 27th. That's it. It's closed. After the end of the month, you can't apply. So have a talk with the wife or the husband or the partner, check and see what they think, and throw your hat into the ring. You could be the next CEO and it could be absolutely wonderful for you. But yes, let's wrap things up and let's go to that next slide.
All right. Well, as Prudence just so eloquently stated, we want to help you if you're interested in participating, if you want to take part in the grand entity that is the ICANN multi-stakeholder process. Yeah, if it's something that makes you excited, if it's something that you want to have your company or your voice heard, there's different ways you can do that. For instance, you can join the intellectual property constituency, or because everything in ICANN is acronym, they're shortened obviously to the IPC. They represent the views and interests of the intellectual property community worldwide in the ICANN ecosystem. Another place you can enter is through the business constituency, or the BC, and that's the voice of the commercial internet users around the world in the ICANN sphere. Or if you also are either interested in having your own .brand, if you don't have one yet, or if you do already run one, you can join the BRG, the Brand Registry Group, which is an association of companies and organizations that champion the use of .brand top-level domains. So if any of those interest you, reach out to Prudence, reach out to me, reach out to anybody on the team. We'd be happy to to shepherd you through the process of figuring out how your entity can join, and how we can get you plugged in so that you can feel good about navigating through the ICANN world. And I think that's about it. I don't know if Prudence, if you wanted to close up.
Yeah, let me take it home. Let's hit that next slide, I think. All right, so look, you guys have already expressed an interest. You've taken part in our polls. You've stayed with us past the hour to give us an extra 10 minutes of ICANN goodness. We are not only appreciative of you, we're going to be going to Puerto Rico in March. come with us. Look, let us engage and give you your first ICANN experience. Okay, that sounded weird, but you know what I mean, and you know where I'm going with it. So we want to help you engage with ICANN, and we want you to dip your toe into that pool and not find it intimidating. Part of the reason for how we revamped our website was to demystify ICANN and to make it accessible for everyone. And we want you to take your seat at the table, because the best way to make the change is to be at the table and demand the change. So come with us and we'll take you under our wing, we'll feed you, my favorite, and we'll also just make sure that you feel comfortable and confident about navigating the ICANN space. We have many clients that are actively engaged in ICANN, and you should be one of them. So feel free to reach out and ask any of us on this team, or just email GIR imaginative at markmonitor.com, and you'll get through to all of us at any one given time. And feel free to ask any questions that you have, or just say, you know, what should I do? How do I go about it? And we'll happily guide you through this exciting and wonderful space. I know historically ICANN has been or seemed intimidating or boring. It is anything but, and we want you to engage and we want you to participate, and we'll be there in San Juan in Puerto Rico in March, and you're welcome to join us. And I promise you I won't feed you plantain, promise. All right, so look, thank you so much for staying an extra 10 minutes. Our last slide is a question slide, but ultimately what we want to say is thank you for supporting us, for being there for us, and allowing us to talk to you for over an hour about ICANN. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team at gir@markmonitor.com. And again, thank you so much for your time today. It's been amazing. Thank you.